can start with
Okay.
when I was ready to start.
Yeah, we're started. We're going.
We're going. Okay. Well, I was born in Hordeville, Nebraska, October the 20th, 1918. My family already I had a brother and a sister. And a few years later, I had another sister. We lived in Hordeville for a few years.
What was your mom's name?
Martha. My mother's name was Martha. My dad's name was Henry.
What was your mom's last name before she got married?
My mother's maiden name was Lundell.
Lundell?
Lundell, Lundell. And my dad had no middle name, just Henry. And
How'd they meet, your parents?
My mother came to Nebraska to visit some friends. Came with a friend or a relative or someone. Made a trip to Nebraska to visit family. And while she was there, she met my dad. And then she went home, back to Utah, where she was living. And then they corresponded, and then eventually she came back, and they got married.
Where'd she live in Utah, do you remember?
In Spanish Fork, Utah. And
Is that by the mountains?
Yes. And she came back, and they got married. And then...
How old was she?
She was young. She was around 19 or 20. And my dad was 35 or 36, something like that.
Had he been married before?
No, never been married. And lived at home with his family, with his mother and dad.
So your dad was from Nebraska?
Yes.
Lived there his whole life?
Lived there his whole life. His parents homesteaded there, and my dad was born in a sod house.
Homesteaded. Does that mean they went out and
They established
claimed some land?
some land there. And my dad had one brother and three sisters. And after I was born, my mother and dad lived in Hordeville for a couple of years. And then they moved to Marquette, and they lived in Marquette in the same house for all the times that we were kids growing up and living there with them. In fact, my mother lived there until she sold the house and moved to California.
Well, you're getting ahead of me. When your mom moved back to Hordeville, she was how old did you say she was?
Well, when they got married, she was like I think around 19 or 20.
What did your dad do?
He was a thrasher. He ran a thrashing machine, and he followed the crops, and they would have a thrasher and a crew that would go out and go from one farm to the other. Now, in the winter months, I'm not sure what, but he lived with his at home with his folks.
What was a thrash machine like? What did it look like?
It was a big piece of equipment, and it had he had a big, like a steam engine that pulled it, and then the thrasher took care of thrash the grain out instead of the way they do it nowadays.
So did he own the equipment, or did
Yes, he did.
And so he'd just go around looking for stuff?
He had some help during the season, and they would just go from one farm area to another, and thrash their grain, small grain.
Why did your mom come to Nebraska? Was she just there to visit?
She just came for a visit.
Did she have relatives there?
Yeah, she had some relatives there, and she came to visit, and she met him, and she went back, but then it wasn't very long till she came back and they got married.
Do you remember what year they got married?
I think it was 1912. I'm not lost. I think they got married in 1912.
So they got married in 1912, and they set up a home in Hoardsville.
First home was in Hoardville.
Hoardville.
Then they moved to Marquette, and they lived in that same place